the Roman Empire, stretching from the sunlit shores of the Mediterranean to the dense, foreboding forests of Germania, faced one of its longest, most challenging confrontations in its northern frontier. For centuries, the Romans sought to extend their reach into Germania, a land they viewed as barbaric and untamable. Yet the Germanic tribes, fiercely independent and resistant to foreign rule, would not yield easily. What unfolded was a series of brutal, unending wars that reshaped the destiny of both Rome and Germania, leaving a legacy of struggle that echoed through the ages. In 9 AD, the ambitious Roman governor Publius Quinctilius Varus had grand plans to pacify Germania once and for all. Known for his ruthless efficiency, Varus had gained favor in Rome by subduing rebellions and expanding the empire's influence. But Germania, with its untamed wilderness and fragmented tribes, posed a different challenge. The Roman strategy for Germania was initially one of conquest through forced integration. The plan was simple: impose Roman law, language, and customs on the tribal societies, gradually transforming Germania into a Roman province. However, beneath the surface, the Germanic people harbored a fierce loyalty to their traditions and independence. Among the Germanic leaders, none was more crucial than Arminius, a chieftain of the Cherusei tribe who had been raised in Rome and served in the Roman military. He knew Rome's tactics, its strengths, and its weaknesses. To Varus, Arminius was an invaluable ally, a Germanic warrior who understood the Roman way and would help bridge the cultural divide. But for Arminius, the Roman gift of citizenship was a double-edged sword. While Rome viewed his loyalty as a given, Arminius saw Rome's presence as a direct threat to his people's way of life, and he was willing to do anything to drive them out. As Varus led his legions deep into the Teutoburg forest, Arminius put his plan into motion. Using his influence and Roman trust, he rallied various tribes under the promise of freedom. In a carefully orchestrated ambush, the Germanic tribes struck the Roman legions, unleashing chaos and fury. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest became a bloodbath that decimated Varus's forces. Thousands of Roman soldiers were killed, and Varus took his own life rather than face the disgrace of defeat. News of the devastating loss shocked Rome. The empire, undefeated in countless battles across the known world, had been dealt a severe blow. For the first time, Roman expansion met a formidable barrier. The defeat changed the empire's approach, turning its ambition for conquest into a bitter, ongoing struggle to maintain control over the borderlands. In the following years, Rome sent some of its most accomplished generals to avenge the loss. The campaigns, led by commanders like Germanicus, sought to reassert dominance over the tribes and restore Roman honor. Germanicus waged relentless campaigns, capturing villages, torching strongholds, and seizing hostages. His efforts brought partial victories, but the Germanic tribes, guided by a profound knowledge of their land, continuously eluded Rome's grasp, striking back with guerrilla tactics that wore down the disciplined legions. These wars became a vicious cycle. For every village the Romans captured, two more would rise in rebellion. For every Germanic chieftain subdued, another would take his place, leading his people in resistance. The tribes had no central leader, no singular government. They fought as fragmented but fiercely loyal clans, united only in their desire to repel the foreign invader. This fragmented structure was a double-edged sword. It made organizing a cohesive resistance difficult, yet it also made the tribes virtually impossible to conquer fully. Decades turned into centuries, and the Roman frontier in Germania hardened into a vast, fortified line along the Rhine River. This frontier, known as the Limes Germanicus, was a physical and psychological barrier, separating the Roman world from the barbarian lands. Forts, watchtowers, and legions guarded this boundary, creating a tense standoff that lasted for generations. The Romans brought trade, diplomacy, and occasional skirmishes to their Germanic neighbors, but true conquest remained elusive. Through the centuries, the Germanic tribes grew stronger. While Rome battled internal struggles, including political corruption, economic troubles, and threats from other borders, Germania remained a looming presence on the empire's edge. Roman generals attempted treaties, offering lands and wealth to tribal leaders in exchange for loyalty. Some tribes accepted, but others saw Roman gifts as bribes, a dishonorable lure into submission. The conflicts reached another fever pitch in the late 4th and early 5th centuries when waves of migration swept through Germania. Pressured by the movements of the Huns, various Germanic tribes such as the Goths, Vandals, and Franks surged across Roman borders in search of new lands. For these tribes, the Roman Empire was both a threat and an opportunity. Some sought to ally with Rome, while others, hardened by centuries of conflict, saw Rome's wealth as theirs for the taking. Rome's frontier defenses, already strained, began to crumble. The endless wars had weakened the legions and drained the empire's resources. By 410 AD, the Visigoths, under their leader Alaric, sacked Rome itself, a staggering blow to the once unassailable empire. Rome's authority continued to erode, its territories shrinking as Germanic kingdoms rose in its former lands. What began as an imperial ambition to expand into Germania had, over centuries, transformed into a series of conflicts that ultimately reshaped the empire. The Germanic tribes, once disparate and fragmented, emerged as powerful kingdoms that would play a central role in the post-Roman world. The endless wars between Rome and Germania ultimately contributed to the fall of Rome and the rise of a new era. From the ruins of the Roman Empire, Germanic leaders established realms that would evolve into the foundations of Europe. The borders that once divided Roman and Germanic lands dissolved, but the memory of those relentless, bloody conflicts endured, becoming part of the legend of both Rome and Germania. In a bitter twist, the dreams of conquest and unification that had driven Rome toward Germania ultimately came to fruition, but not in the way the Romans had intended. The legacy of those endless wars lives on in the aftermath of Rome's encounters with Germania left a profound impact on both civilizations, and as the years stretched on, this clash of cultures and ambitions transformed the fabric of Europe itself. As the 5th century dawned, Rome was a shadow of its former self, its vast territories fragmented, its once mighty legions exhausted and depleted. While internal corruption and economic decline played critical roles, the unrelenting pressure from the north, primarily from the Germanic tribes, had undeniably hastened its downfall. These tribes, who had long resisted Rome's influence, now moved in waves across the empire's weakening borders. Where once they had been on the defensive, they now surged forward, seeking not merely to raid but to settle and rule. Germanic chieftains, many of whom had once fought against Rome or even served as mercenaries in its armies, began to carve out territories within Roman lands. They were no longer simply adversaries of Rome. They were becoming inheritors of its legacy. Figures like Alaric of the Visigoths, Theodoric of the Ostrogoths, and Clovis of the Franks emerged as powerful leaders, each one leaving a mark on Europe's emerging kingdoms. The Germanic people were absorbing aspects of Roman culture, law, and governance, transforming it into something uniquely their own. As Rome's territories continued to splinter, the process of Romanization left an indelible mark on the Germanic tribes. These former adversaries of Rome began to integrate elements of Roman governance, military organization, and even language into their societies. Latin became a language of the elite in these new kingdoms, and Roman law codes were adopted and adapted to fit Germanic customs. Even Christianity, which had once spread across the Roman Empire, found new converts among the tribes. Missionaries journeyed from Rome into the northern territories, spreading the faith and cementing cultural ties between the former empire and the Germanic kingdoms that rose from its ashes. The tribes that had once resisted Roman influence were now blending aspects of their warrior traditions with the more sophisticated, organized structures of Roman society. A new social order began to emerge, merging tribal loyalties with the Roman ideals of governance. These hybrid societies became the foundations of medieval Europe, each one influenced by both Roman and Germanic traditions. In some regions, the local rulers took Roman titles such as Rex, king, and they administered justice according to both Roman law and traditional Germanic customs. The balance between these influences varied from region to region, but the result was a complex, resilient new cultural identity that laid the groundwork for the eventual rise of European nations. By the 8th century, Charlemagne, the king of the Franks and a direct descendant of those who had once resisted Rome, would attempt to reunify Europe under a Christianized Roman identity. Charlemagne's ambition mirrored Rome's dream of a unified continent, yet his rule was deeply influenced by his Germanic heritage. In 800 AD, he was crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III, symbolizing the blending of Roman and Germanic worlds. Charlemagne's empire would come to be known as the Holy Roman Empire, an entity that aspired to revive the legacy of Rome under the rule of a Germanic dynasty. This empire would be shaped by the memory of the endless wars, embodying both the resilience of the Germanic spirit and the ambition of Rome. Over time, the legacy of the Roman-Germanic conflict became enshrined in the cultural consciousness of Europe. The Limes Germanicus, once a hardened border between Rome and Germania, faded as new territories emerged. However, the cultural divide between Latin-speaking and Germanic-speaking Europe endured, shaping the distinct identities of Western and Central Europe. Latin evolved into the Romance languages, and the Germanic dialects grew into the languages that would become German, Dutch, and English. The wars between Rome and Germania had taught Europe lessons in resistance, resilience, and adaptation. The Germanic tribes that had fought Rome left a legacy of strength and independence, while Rome's influence became the backbone of European culture, law, and religion. This legacy of integration and conflict created a Europe that was both united in shared values and divided by unique cultural identities. By the time the Middle Ages flourished, the memory of Rome's struggles in Germania had evolved into legends and epics. Songs and stories, like the Nibelungenlied and tales of heroic warriors, captured the spirit of the Germanic resistance and valor. Roman authors chronicled these battles as tragedies and warnings, while Germanic sagas celebrated their ancestors as heroes who had defied the mightiest empire the world had ever known. These endless wars had also shifted Rome's sense of itself, particularly as its legacy continued to influence the Germanic kingdoms that came to rule over its lands. The Church,